everybody. Michelle is here on a Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. February 10th, 2026. Yeah. Ooh, wow. I wanted to continue to, stay on this collective that I spoke about the other day, about how it only took one person to decide to rest and mind their own motherfucking business, but it resonated with millions. Now, that can either be a beautiful thing or a tragedy, a catastrophe, actually. And the latter is the truth. We are in a catastrophe because of the majority of the collective decided to swirl around in the criminal negative energy instead of, in other words, they preferred to rinse and repeat, instead of moving outside of that. Thus, they created a criminal negative energy force, that's separate. In other words, they created a force of criminal negative energy that's operating, without the need of a human being. In other words, a human being cannot control it. It doesn't matter if they're a dictator or not. And so here's the tragedy that we're facing. And so I'm going to have to probably do a couple of more videos on this, because this really has to be clear to those of you who continue to operate in criminal negative energy via religion, via politics, via whatever, those factors are, part of that tentacles, that it is mainly criminal religious energy, criminal negative religious energy. That is the most catastrophic force of energy that we have upon us, that encases this whole planet. Okay, now that I got that all out, so what I want you to, just see if you can follow me here. Okay, as I said, we're all energy, and we operate collectively and we operate individually. Okay, individually is our responsibility and accountability is to evolve our consciousness. As I have been saying for a few years now, it's about the evolution of the consciousness. I've been saying that for a few years. Okay, fine. And a lot of people, it went over their head. Okay, a lot of people disregarded me. Okay, I mean, that's why I had to, every now and then you're going to have to get yourself out of certain situations. Okay, which means separating yourself from people. Sometimes you just have to do that. In other words, they're not accepting your vision, your innovation, your creativity, whatever. So you just have to separate yourself from that, deconstruct from that type of energy, because it's all energy anyway. Just deconstruct. They don't see your vision. They are attempting to discourage you, actually, because they don't understand. And I didn't realize I was dealing with a lot of people that were wet behind the ears. You can be enthusiastic, you can be excited, you can be so-called motivated, but it does involve life experiences. Okay, when you cut it and slice it and do whatever you want to do with it, it has to be life experiences involved. So I have to deal with people that have had life experiences. Okay, and that's no disregard to anything other than just that. So I talked about, as I said, the collective energy, and how mightful that is, how powerful that is, and how beautiful it is too. Okay, I said, like I said, there was one person, and that's all it. See, when you are resonating with each other collectively, your sounds and tones are going to strike them, impulse them to do certain things. Okay? And that's negative and positive. That's one thing we need to keep in mind. And what we've done over the course of decades, thousands of years, have stayed on the negative aspect of that collectiveness. Okay, you understand me? It's a bottleneck of criminal negative energy. Okay, and I've told you what's in there, and it's mainly religious dogma. It's mainly what's there. That's what's causing the criminality of it all is religion. Okay, suspend your beliefs, suspend your dogmas, just relax, attempt to absorb what I'm saying, and suspend your labels. Whether you are religious, whether you are a business owner, whether you are a CEO, just suspend that. Whether you are autistic, whether you are neurodivergent or neurodivergent or whatever, every so often we come up with so many different labels, and those labels are suffocating. So many people, because that's all they think about. And it's a rumination over your so-called mental illness. Okay, some people will spend their whole, almost a large portion of their life talking about their mental illness. And before you know it, 10 years have gone by. Before you know it, 20 years have gone by. And they're still ruminating about their mental illness. The same thing with their sexuality. There's constantly, ruminating about their sexuality. When I told you, that's just a small part of who you are. It's a beautiful part, your sexuality, yes. But that's just a small part, Like my teeth. My teeth are beautiful. But that's just a small part of who I need more than just my teeth to be a whole, complete, genuine human being in the true sense. And so that's what we do. We're stuck, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And some people just live like that, literally. It's not only in their formulas of success and I can just talk about this over and over. But I just want to say this, I don't want to, keep these videos too long because I know about our attention span, unfortunately. And it's unfortunate because we are so pressed with our time now. We've allowed our time to be pressed where we can barely have time to sit down and breathe properly via meditation. So that's why meditation has to advance in every activity. Not many people have the opportunity to just sit in a lotus position all day. That's illogical, actually, because you got other things that has to be taken care of. So integrate meditation into that. If you got to wash your clothes, integrate it. If you got to clean your room, clean your house, integrate it. So as I said, all it took is one person to say, look, I am going to rest and mind my own goddamn business. And guess what? That was a signal, a sign that no one can touch, by the way, of the collective and the power of our energy. Okay, when you resonate with people. And that's the whole idea, that as what I'm attempting to do with these thousands of videos. It has to be a step process. And some people have done that. Some people have, even though I'm walking in a particular path, my own path, others are walking along with me. They're invisible to me. If I look for them physically in my environment, they're not there, but their energy is. Okay, my energy is there. Their energy is there. That's why we can walk along these paths. And I know someone said this a couple of years ago, and this was just esoteric bullshit, but it is true. Someone said, I could be talking to someone, for example, I'm sitting right here, on the West Coast. Okay. And I can speak to someone on the East Coast and they can hear me. That's true, actually. A lot of people talk about the butterfly effect as well. And let's look that up real quick. Da 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 da. Butterfly. What is it called? Butterfly effect, I think. Butterfly energy. Let's see, because everything's changing. Oh gosh, but what? See how these and these self-correcting, this artificial intelligence, this constantly coming in and correcting what we are doing is so annoying. It's so annoying because what they're doing is attempting to predict what we're saying. Oh God. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, brother. And then you have to, and if you want to dive deep into what something is, you have to pay for it. But anyway, I'm not finding what I want because it's all been, and see what's happening and unfortunately what's happening is with words, they're becoming, they've been a commodity for decades upon decades. That's why spiritual means absolutely nothing as opposed to what it ought to mean. But let me explain this here as best I can. When you are evolving your consciousness and you are intentionally moving horizontally, vertically out of the encasement of negativity. In other words, you do that by deconstructing first. If however you want to consider it, deconstruct, consider to re-examine your life by reconstructing it. Self-education is so important. But as you are reconstructing your life, you're considering everything going on around you. And by the way, no one has to know you're doing this. That's what's so important. So you have to incorporate meditation, which is just concentration and awareness, because that's what meditation is. It equals concentration and awareness. You want to be aware of your reality and make sure it's in alignment, make sure it's logical, rational, and reasonable. Okay, what do I hear? Are I hearing actual sounds or am I hearing? So it is true that what I say and my behaviors and actions affects, I'm on the West Coast, it affects what's happening on the East Coast. It affects what's happening North, South, East, and West. Yes, that tiny bit of what I'm doing does affect everybody else. And when we're massively, massively overpopulated as we are, it affects us more directly than indirectly. Okay, so because we're in each other's energetic space. We're interfering with each other. And we're not in alignment at all. Not by, as I said, we got almost 10 billion people on this planet. Okay, and maybe under a billion, like myself, we are snapping out of it, or we've snapped out of it, and we're attempting to snap others out of it. And it's not gonna. It's just gonna resonate with just so many people throughout, and then it can affect each other's environment. So in other words, when I snap out of it, and I'm resonating properly, my environment is going to know that and assist me. And it's an unconscious thing. It's not really much anyone can do about it. That's evolution right there, especially if it's positive. And then also, especially if it's negative. You get me there? So the reason why it's so important to understand who you are, what you are, and why you are, you realize how you are affecting other people. Most people don't give a fuck. It's obvious. That's why we have this criminal negative energy. And we have people that are fortified in that. But they don't realize, this is the part that a lot of the people that are fortified in themselves into the criminal negative energy, that's gonna start affecting them, or has affected them, but they're so unconscious and so delusional and hallucinating, they don't realize what they're doing as they are continuing to spin, rinse and repeat, spin, rinse and repeat, doing the same things over and over and over. Because now, we're being told about this catastrophe of a so-called leader, in the U.S. government. Hey, whereas this person doesn't realize how they are burying themselves. They have no clue how they're burying themselves. And I'm going to come back and say to you and talk to you a little bit more about what that actually means, to be burying yourself, because that's important to know, and that may help, which I doubt. There's no evidence of it, but I'm hopeful instead of feeling hopeless. So peace and love, and trust me, I will be back.